Morning, afternoon, evening, good night, maybe to some of you, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on buying and investing in the UK. My name is Emily Despois. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Fine & Country, and I will be your host for this webinar. We have had many questions, so we will try to answer as many as possible. If you have any questions during this webinar as well, there is a chat box where you can add your questions, and we'll try to get onto those ones if we can. But I am joined by an amazing panel of experts that know everything about buying and investing in the UK, and they will obviously answer those questions for you. So let's start with the introductions. Maybe, John, do you want to start? Name, company, and your area of expertise, please.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for dialing in and coming to this webinar for buying and returning in the UK. My name is Jonathan Hanford. I'm the interim managing director at Fine & Country. 25 years experience on the front line, listing and selling property. So hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions that you've got. But once again, thanks for dialing in.
Thank you. Nick, Finn, over to you. We've got two Nicks, so I'll have to do something about this.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone for joining us. So I'm Nicholas Finn, or Nick now, but I'll go with Nicholas just because there's two on the call. But I'm the Managing Director of Garage Property Finders, and I run a team of 26 search consultants covering the whole of the UK. It's the largest buying agent in the UK, independent sales agents, and here to talk to you about questions you have on the buying process.
Fantastic, thank you. Nick Pascoe, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Nick Pascoe. I'm a senior partner at Blevins Franks. I'm now based in the UK. I've been back for 8 years, but previously worked in Portugal and France. And we provide financial planning advice, investment advice, and that's very tax-led. We have chartered financial planners in the business as well, tax advisors in the business.
Thank you very much. Chris?
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Lloyd. Thank you for joining this afternoon. I'm a partner at NS Global. I've got over a decade of experience in advising clients looking to purchase, refinance property in the UK, and I would say a lot of our clients are international, so we'll be talking to you and giving you kind of an overview on how you can obtain lending in the UK, especially if you're looking to purchase in the next 18 months.
Thank you very much. And Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone for joining. My name is Matthew McClure. I'm one of the senior traders here at Lumon. We're currency exchange brokerage out of Farringdon, London. We've been in business for 25 years next month. I've worked here for 5 years now, so assisting with clients moving large volume transfers internationally for property purchases, property sales, international investment, and everything else. And yeah, really the aim here at Lumon is to undercut what a bank may offer as an exchange rate with our own competitive rates, offer an expert service to assist our clients in timing their exchanges and ultimately save the money.
Great, thank you. So the structure of this webinar, very briefly, we will go first into the property market in the UK and what it looks like, the buying process. We will then move on to your tax related questions, mortgage and finance related questions, and then currency, which is extremely important when you are moving currency from one country to another. So John, if I may, we'll start with you about the market. Any trends that you're currently seeing in the UK property market?
Yeah, a lot of lifestyle-driven moves is, I think, is the top of the charts at the minute. People upsizing, downsizing. That's the general movement pattern. We've seen a squeeze on the rental markets. I think landlords are under a lot of pressure at the minute. There's acquisition and exit costs. There's management costs. It's becoming more difficult to let properties. So the Renters' Rights Bill, I think, is going to compound that problem. And although it's introduced to help tenants, it could have the reverse impact. It could actually increase rents across the board. some of the patterns and trends that we're seeing, sustainability and tech-driven homes is high up on the agenda of people and developers and planners. You know, that's something that's important moving forward. We're seeing town centres and city centres shift from commercial and retail to residential because there's more of a demand. So you're seeing these big buildings getting converted into luxury apartments. So that's quite a big thing. Branded residences are another big thing, where you've almost got a community within a tower block. You know, I was in Manchester last week. There's some incredible buildings there. You don't need to leave the complex. They've got a gym, they've got a workspace, they've got a coffee shop, everything's in one place. So it's back to this lifestyle thing. You know, if you've got all of that on your doorstep, it's not just about the bricks and mortar and the square foot of your apartment, it's the lifestyle that comes with living in a complex like that. So there are a few of the trends that we're seeing across the board.
Fantastic. I mean, that piece around the Renters' Right Bill and renters, I'm guessing a lot of people on this call will have questions around what it is, what does it mean, and should I actually invest in the UK or not? So something maybe that we can touch upon a bit later as well. The second question was on any locations and property types which are more in demand at the moment.
So the Northwest has had a particular surge in activity and demand, believe it or not, with strong sales volumes and price growth. Manchester is up year on year, Liverpool the same. There was a prediction that Northwest prices could jump to 29.4% by 2029, 2030, which was quite surprising. Northern Ireland is another one, 10% year on year. So it's another particular growth spot. So yeah, in terms of luxury and £1 million homes, properties outside London are booming. Surrey is quite a significant one. Again, it's still within the commuter belt. Again, if you look further north up into Edinburgh, there are a few EH postcodes as well, which are competing against some of the trends in the rest of the country. And you talked about buy-to-let. There's two places, Redcar and Cleveland in North Yorkshire. Buy-to-let transactions make up 50% of all sales there, and the yield is 9.8%. That's outperforming some parts of the UAE and Dubai. So there are still some hotspots across the UK if you go looking for them.
I was going to ask actually that Northwest in my mind is probably property prices are still affordable for investors and people wanting to make some money out of rents. So that is probably a big factor as well. Any advice you would give to someone who is starting their plans to return to the UK?
Yeah, so look, I said this. We did one of these webinars a few weeks back. The first and most important thing is to speak to somebody like Chris and get an understanding of your ability to be able to buy in terms of finances. So many people will go windmilling into the process, looking at properties with no clear picture as to exactly what it is that they can afford. You're wasting your time, the seller's time, the agent's time. You've got to be more efficient, and you could be looking in the wrong price bracket, either too high or too low. So get a crystal clear vision of what it is that you can afford to buy before you do anything, or if you can even buy at all. So there are a lot of people that believe that they can, they then they find the house of their dreams or the home of their dreams, they then talk to the financial advisor and say, actually, for these reasons, you're gonna have to wait 6 or 12 months or get this put in place. So always start with finances first.
Finances first, very good. And then we have a few questions from that came. One of them is, and might be I'll ask to take out your crystal ball on this one. Is leasehold here to stay?
Yes. Yeah, leasehold's not going anywhere. It can't. It's there for a reason. And where you've got a block of flats and apartments on top of each other, there needs to be some form of leasehold system in order for that to be able to work. I think you will see the eradication of leasehold on detached and semi-detached buildings because it's not a necessity. A lot of lenders introduce that as a stealth tax to try and get more money from the transaction. leasehold reform is also here to stay, and you will see more changes in the future to protect property owners and leasehold buyers. With less draconian measures, you'll have a minimum term which will be 1,000 years, whereas before you were seeing 100 years, 125 years at most. You'll see a lot more equal shares of freeholds, but leasehold is here to stay, but it will be tweaked to make it a fairer and more balanced system.
So it seems that the government is making a lot at the moment to protect whether the property owners living within a leasehold or the renters that are living with a landlord. So it's quite interesting, the dynamics at the moment. And then there is a question, which is, what's the real estate investment environment in the UK right now, since there's exodus of millionaires and billionaires from the UK?
Great question. So I saw that in advance of today. And obviously there's been a lot of news about this, and the UK possibly having the biggest exodus of millionaires from the country. But I just want to put this in context for a second, because there's a lot of sensationalist headlines. There are 3 million millionaires in the UK. So if we lose 15,000, it's not end of days, it's not the end of the world in the grand scheme of things. We'd rather not lose them, but it doesn't mean that the economy is on the brink of imploding, and that might have been what has been reported within the newspapers. So there are more than 1 million millionaires in London alone. And there is always a correction in markets. And I think at the minute there is probably a little bit of pressure because of the extra taxation, so we're going to lose a few. And as part of that same question, I think the person asked, well, what about billionaires? Well, actually, probably best not to look at that. There's only 3,000 billionaires worldwide, and there's only 77 of them in the UK, so it's kind of neither here nor there. I think that the millionaires thing is a more reasonable thing to look at and to focus. But when it's less than 0.5% of your overall total, I don't think it's panic stations. And I think a lot of them who we've seen where people have moved overseas to places like Dubai, they've lived there for a little bit, and then they've realised that their family ties, their connections, their businesses, for whatever reason, they've brought them back again. So they might leave temporarily to have a bit of time overseas, only to come back again in the future.
Yeah, I think it's in the last webinar where we discussed as well some of the reasons for returning in the UK, and family, friends is a big reason for going back to your to the country where you were born, really. Thank you very much, John. As I said, I'll move on to the buying process, but if any of you have anything to add to any of the questions from your own expertise, please do not hesitate to jump in as well. Nicholas, over to you. Could you explain what is the difference between a buying agent, a sale agent, and a relocation agent?
I'll start at the end there. So yeah, relocation agents typically dealing with the letting market. So you've got corporate relocation, normally big business moves from overseas into, well, anywhere, but we're talking about UK here. So relocation into the UK, normally a couple of days worth of property searching, see as many properties as possible, and then pick the one you like the most. Private client relocation, which is what Garrington does for renter clients, is to actually advise on locations, find suitable property, shortlist, arrange tours, and then take a rental property. So relocation tends to be tagged into the rental market. Then sales agents, we've obviously heard from Jonathan there, but with Fine & Country being one of the best agents out there on the sales side, representing sellers and their property. And I think that's probably the important difference on the sales agent and the buying agent. I think sales agency is all about the marketing strategy and getting that right, putting the property in the right places and getting as many eyes on it as possible. Or if it's a discrete sale, a lot of what we acquire are discreetly marketed, then it comes down to who you know and having those buyer lists and buying agents for those property. But I think from a sales agent point of view, they're representing the seller to get the best possible price through the best marketing strategy. And then that comes around to the buying agent. which is what Garrington is. And we act purely on the buyer's side. So all of our advice is on the buyer side. We never take a sales fee, so we're never conflicted, and we don't take on conflicting searches. So any client we're acting for has their member of the team searching specifically for their brief, and our job is to exhaustively search the market, find opportunities for our clients, share those and highlight the pros and cons. We're not here selling property, so we're here highlighting the important factors. And spoiler alert, for any budget, doesn't matter whether it's the billionaires and the multi-millionaires, there's always a compromise. So our job is to almost flag those up and then deal with advice on price, negotiation strategy. And then probably the important bit is seeing that transaction through to a successful completion. That's probably the undervalued part of the service, but the bit that people rate highest when they feed back. And then we're there for completion. So a buying agent is there to find, advise and buy.
Fantastic, thank you. I think you touched upon discreetly marketing a property, which people might not be aware, which is from time to time we do get clients from a sales agent perspective where the client is not eager to have their property marketed publicly for whichever reason. There might be many reasons behind that. So at Fine & Country, for example, we do offer this service where we would not publicly sell a property and rely on our database to sell the property for that client. And obviously Nicholas and Garrington are buying agents that we would approach and just say, do you have any buyers that fit that property and that criteria? And someone like Garrington has access to the discreetly marketed property, which people who are looking themselves on the open market would not obviously know or see, which leads to the next question really, which is, what can you do which I cannot do myself?
I think you've just touched on there, Emily. I think it's who you know as well as what you know, but it's finding those properties through any means necessary. Our job is to find whatever we can. So whether working with the sales agents on their discreetly listed properties or properties they've had on before or they know about, and everything from direct letter dropping to social media, discreetly marketing for what we're looking for, just to go through as many doors as possible and consider as many properties. I think it's a time factor as well. It's a full-time job. That's why I've got a team out there doing this every waking minute of the day. They're working for clients on sourcing properties and acquiring those properties. So I think it's dedicating, every working minute to a property search. It's kind of a big deal that we get appointed on, and it's spending the time searching, finding, and then I suppose we take a little bit for granted that, probably John's team do as well, we do this day in, day out. Clients often don't move that often, whereas we're doing it all the time. So we're very au fait with the language and the way to approach transactions, not to get too emotional or stressed out about survey reports. Most things can be solved either with good lawyers or spending a bit more money. So our job there is to use our experience and expertise to find and acquire properties.
Yeah, I think you do save time, and also for people looking from another country, at least you're doing all the research that needs to be done before maybe they come and see a property, or you could, I guess, get that property for them. So from an investment perspective, for example, does it happen that you acquire properties for customers without them visiting that property, for example?
Yes, we've done a number of those. We adapted the business quite well over lockdown, where we had to act for a number of overseas clients looking to come back to be near family, friends, changes of life. So bringing in video software, desktop reporting, the ability to carry out due diligence and revisit properties, live streaming, etc. So yeah, a lot of what we do, both for domestic and overseas clients, is videoing and advising. But yeah, a number of clients have acquired without ever stepping foot in their property that they're buying as a return to the UK. And for investment clients as well, sometimes that's a lot more statistical and spreadsheet purchase than it is emotional. But I think all investor clients still want to be proud of what they're buying and know what they're buying. So again, you have to, whether it's the great details that are provided by the sales agent or the videos that we provide, allows a client to really understand what it is they're buying.
Fantastic. There's another point which says a large proportion of purchases seems to fall through. Is there a reason for this?
I think the stat's about 1 in 3, about 30% of transactions fall through. I think some of that will be, as John pointed out there, if you haven't got your finances set beforehand and you find out you can't, with Chris's advice, do what you were hoping to do because you didn't get your ducks in a row, that can be an issue. Sometimes I think buyer remorse, a buyer will run around a property, get excited, and then take a step back and maybe change of mind. And then I think it's advice as well. It can be difficult if you don't do this day in, day out to actually understand what a survey is telling you or what a lawyer is telling you. And I think sometimes it is just a case of not having the right advisors around you. As you can imagine, very few of our purchases fall through, and only if something comes up during the purchase that we're not happy with. But I think if you're well informed, you do your homework, you line your ducks up, then it's less likely a transaction will fall through because it's expensive. Surveys cost a lot of money, lawyers cost a lot of money if you don't go through with the purchase. So it's an expensive mistake to make not proceeding with the property.
So yes, finances, but is there, I mean, that's actually a question that is not on there, but I'm guessing some people would wonder, and it's maybe a question for everyone. Is there a way that I could somehow, if I want to buy a property, prevent a fall through? Are there some things that I could ask of my estate agents or the vendor or anyone that would maybe make it a bit more safe and secure for me?
John, I think probably one between buying agent and sales agent, but I think material information, as much as that came in and has come in over the stages, maybe put a bit of fear into the market. I think it's a good thing that a lot more information, for those that don't know, we won't go into detail because we'd lose the rest of the hour, but it's the upfront information a seller provides to their agent, the agent provides to the market, so that there's more upfront information for someone to make a buying decision on. So I think that is helping, and then I think it is buyers doing their homework and just being sure. There's certain other systems around the world, and I suspect we've got people online who look at the English system and think, oh yeah, we've got to go back to that, which is very fragile. And in other countries, there's a deposit paid up front. There's a much quicker legal process, or shorter calling off periods. But of course, in the UK, you can run all the way up to the day of exchange and change your mind. But again, as we said, it can be very expensive. But I think it is just making sure you want to make an acquisition a purchase, and that you have a good surveyor, good solicitor, good financial advisor, and a good team around you to make that happen.
Thank you. And maybe I'm going to add a question. I said to you that I wouldn't throw any curveball, but I will. Here we go. Maybe between John and you, could you briefly explain, I want to buy a property, what's the process of buying a property? Who do I need to instruct? Who do I need to talk to? What are the fees in a very brief way, if possible?
I mean, I can cover it from the buyer side because this is all we do. Whether you're doing it on your own or appointing a buying agent, there's two different routes to go. But after that, I think everything is view a property, do your homework, make your decision on how you're going to approach negotiation, whether you've got a buying agent advising you or whether the sales agent is telling you, how best to approach that. But then it is good financial advice, a good broker to get your mortgage in check, or if it's cash, to make sure that you've got everything lined up and you've got all your bank accounts and everything ready to go, so that you're in a position to proceed at pace. I think if you're buying a property, you don't really want a seller to change their mind, especially if you've gone in hard on negotiation. So I think spending money on a lawyer, I mean, these are big transactions that we deal with and big events that obviously buyers deal with. So I think don't scrimp on the advice you get, don't scrimp on the surveyor you get. The solicitor is key to a transaction. Make sure it's someone you're comfortable with, and then listen to what you're asked to do, and just keep doing what you're meant to do during a purchase. I think John is probably, from a buy side, it's just keep going through the steps.
Yeah, look, just to add to that, I think speed is key. You talked about buyer's remorse earlier, but it's just as possible that a seller gets seller's remorse, or there's another buyer that's prepared to pay more money. The longer the transaction goes on, the less chance there is that it will happen. So you can expedite the process by getting things done in advance, get your solicitor ready, get your finances sorted, get all your paperwork ready for your mortgage application if you need one. And then once you enter into the conveyancing process, act in an expeditious fashion, return paperwork quickly. You are, unfortunately, in the UK at the mercy of chains. So it's sometimes the slowest cog in the mechanism. So you could be on point and doing things really quickly, but somebody else in the chain could be dragging their heels. And that is a frustration, but it's unfortunately part and parcel of the process here in the UK. But you don't want to be the slowest cog. So sometimes you can help by getting things done as quickly as possible. And also that shows a willingness to the seller. And then the other thing is, and you touched upon it earlier where you talked about material information, the seller will try and present as much information for you to make an informed decision, but some of that comes out in the wash in the sale process through the conveyancing and through the survey. There is stuff sometimes that you've got to take a view on. Not everything is perfect. And I think if you look for that perfect one, you're going to be looking forever. So there are sometimes things that you've just got to take a view on. So yeah, that would be my advice. But if there's one summary, speed is key.
Speed is key. And so you're talking as well about people changing their minds. In the UK, just as a recap, you put your offer on the property, offer is accepted, then you go through the conveyancing process until you exchange contract. And it's that in between that we're saying is probably the most dangerous. Once you exchange your contract, you actually pay for a deposit. And between your exchange and completion, there is very, very little fall through. So it's really that in between your offer accepted and the exchange where you have to be as quick as possible. And therefore, if you want to maybe not have most of the stress, go to Nicholas. Nicholas, how do I instruct you?
So we would have a consultation with any prospective client just to go through example properties, look at the map and just make sure we're literally on the same page. But then when all parties are happy, the one thing we learned during lockdown is once a client says, yeah, we want to go ahead, they want it to happen pretty quick. So it's a fairly simple online process, a few money laundering hoops to jump through, but that is necessary to appoint us, and then will become necessary when the solicitors get involved, when the sales agent wants to check out the AML. Every HMRC puts all the pressure on the estate agents and the chains to make sure everyone's checked and double checked, and the mortgage broker will check, and everyone will keep checking until you go through the process of buying a property. But yeah, it's once the client says yes, they want to see details flying through, videos coming through, and it's a nice, easy process.
And you will be looking after them, which is great. So Chris, for you on to finance and mortgages, how difficult is it to raise a mortgage on a UK asset as a global resident?
Okay, so if you're not resident in the UK, and this is where at NS we've got kind of full sight of the lending market. So just to touch on that, we've got all of the high street banks, building societies, specialist lenders, and private and investment banks. So often my clients come to me and say that they have tried to speak with the high street banks and obtain a mortgage in the UK. However, they are resident overseas and they are not even planning to move to the UK. They often will, I don't know, for example, a property that they reside in the US or the Middle East, and then they're looking to buy a property in the UK, which maybe their immediate or close family will reside in, or perhaps that they're looking to send their children to university or school in the UK. So the property will be used sort of ad hocly when the clients are in the UK. So the high street banks, they price very competitive. They offer the best rates on the market. However, with that, they're not able to take sort of much risk, and they're really focused on lending to clients that are just based in the UK. The private banks and the more specialist lenders that we have relationships with, they are comfortable. They often, have offices internationally as well. They are very much focused on and being able to onboard clients that are resident overseas. Again, areas sort of US, Middle East, further afield. I've just completed a mortgage for a client resident in Monaco. So most jurisdictions internationally were able to assist clients that are looking to then buy property in the UK. And yes, they may still want to sort of reside out of the UK and then earn in a foreign currency, which would then be used to pay the mortgage. These banks, so the private banks and the more specialist lenders, they are comfortable taking foreign currency into account. They don't need you to have lived in the UK before often. So we're very open to be able to get mortgages for these types of clients. But yeah, it does just take somebody that needs to take a bit more of a holistic view on their wealth and income.
Thank you. Well, so I'll jump to actually a question that I think was linked to that, and I think you answered, which is, how can I obtain a mortgage to buy a London property if all my assets are in Switzerland and the US? I have no assets in the UK. You're effectively saying that that's not a problem and they could get a mortgage in the UK.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, we can, if a client's resident in Switzerland or kind of most places in Europe really as well, if they've got income that's in a foreign currency and they work for a company that's overseas, if they've got their own business that's again in Europe or anywhere else in the world, then we can look to take that income to see the affordability and just ensure that they can, if they're still planning on residing overseas and then also buying a property to use when they're in the UK, it's just making sure that they can afford the mortgage on or the rent that they're paying overseas and also support the costs and the monthly payments of the mortgage in the UK. So it's just again taking that holistic view. Also, we don't need the clients to necessarily be employed or have self-employed income. If you know they've moved to say Monaco, sold their business and have 20-30 million in the bank or a large sum, we can then use that as income to say yes, the client can afford the mortgage payments for the term of the mortgage. So yeah, you're not even required necessarily to have a regular income. We can look at assets to support the mortgage payments as well.
Fantastic. And so what's the process and how long does it take to understand how much someone can raise,
So it's pretty quick and easy to do that. And as John and Nick alluded to, always speak to your mortgage broker first to understand completely what you can borrow, what the interest rate looks like, how much the monthly payments are going to be before looking at getting your offer accepted on a property. And in terms of the timescale that takes, I would have an initial fact-find call with a client, which can take anywhere up to 30 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on the complexity. Once we've had that initial call, I request a global wealth statement, just some initial documentation. I think it always pays, especially, you know, if you're talking about international clients or clients with slightly more complex background, it pays to fully understand the income, expenditure, that kind of global asset position, so that when I'm then initially having conversations with lenders, it ensures that we're mitigating any problems with a decline or any issues during the underwriting process. So once I've got that initial information back from the client that I requested, it will typically only take around 24 to 48 hours to put initial terms together. There are certain cases where are a little bit more complex, which can take, you know, probably up to a week, but on average, I'd say within 24 to 48 hours, we can get an indicative term sheet sent over to a client and confirmation of what documentation would be needed to progress matters further. Now, once we've then progressed and the client's got their offer accepted on a property, we're probably submitting an application, carrying out property valuation and getting formal credit approval. That process can take up to say 2 to 3 weeks if it's a bit more kind of straightforward, but I would say on average probably 3 to 4 weeks to get a mortgage offer out. And at that point, that's the lender saying they're happy for you to draw down on the mortgage once the legal work has been completed.
Fantastic. But I think the point that Nicholas and John made is come to you first to get their mortgage in principle before they even start looking, and they know exactly how much they can borrow. Can you share some examples? Oh. Sorry, I think there's a bit of delay. Carry on.
Yeah, just to add to that, and you both mentioned around, the longer transactions take, the less likely they are to happen. I do have a lot of clients that come to me that have more complex situations, and I think this is where it pays to speak with a specialist broker. I had a client that came to me, he'd been in the process for 6 months with a broker that had put him with the wrong lender. He'd been declined at 5 p.m. on a Friday, spoke to me on the Monday, and by that point he'd sort of nearly lost the property. So we were able to put him in touch with the right lender that was happy with his foreign currency income, and then we were able to secure him a mortgage. And I think it always pays to just do that research up front and make sure that you're with a lender that's actually going to deliver.
Okay. And can you share some examples of loan to value and volume clients are raising?
I think if you're looking to purchase up to around maybe slightly higher than that £500,000 mark, you're looking potentially up to 90–95% loan to value. There are certain lenders that are talking about 100% loan to value mortgages at that sort of level, I think, but they are kind of a bit few and far between. Anywhere up to sort of £1 million, you're looking again 90% loan to value. There's the odd lender that will toy with the idea of 95% at that level, and I think certainly anything up to 2 million with the high street lenders, you're going to cap out maybe 80–85%. But I think anything more than that is where the private banks come into their own. And just to give you a few examples, I've got one at the moment that I'm getting agreed at 90% loan to value against a property value of 4.5 million. And then also I had approved 80% loan to value against a purchase in Chelsea of 80% loan to value, and that property purchase price was 11 million. So for the right client, the private banks can take a view. Often what we get, and again, a few years back, I had a mortgage that I completed. The client purchased at 2.3 million, and I got 95% loan to value confirmed against that. The reason why a private bank would lend a higher amount is often because a client might be starting out, their trajectory is going to be quite significant of, maybe they've just become an equity partner, or they're an actor or an actress that has signed a contract that's going to pay out X amount, potentially within the millions, just in terms of, if they've signed a contract to do a series that's then going to give them that guaranteed income. And if there's quite an influx on that income, then a lender can take a view and say, look, we're happy to lend a larger amount day one if you're then happy to start bringing that loan balance down within the next few years, typically like a low start mortgage.
Thank you. There were many questions for you, but unfortunately I will need to go to Nick and Matt. I'm aware of time. If I can come back to some of those questions, I will. If not, just to let you know, if you're on the call, those questions will go to Chris, and Chris will be able to answer you separately as well. I do apologize if I don't have the time to go through all the questions. Nick, are you back with us?
I am, yes, thank you.
Hey, you are, here we go. So Nick, over to you from a tax perspective. Is there a key tax consideration to ensure we have dealt with before returning to the UK?
Okay, yeah, I suppose the obvious one, and often the easiest one to look at, is any unrealised capital gains that somebody may have as an overseas resident. So if we've got a client that's maybe been working in the UAE or Hong Kong, Singapore, and built up some money there, and they are in a low tax environment or low capital gains tax environment, then certainly worthwhile realising whatever gains they have prior to returning to the UK. We're actually based at France, Spain, Portugal, Cyprus, and Malta, so a couple of those are quite well known for being low tax, Malta and Cyprus in particular. Spain may be an opportunity as well. Spain, you have to live there each year for 183 days to become a resident each year. So if somebody's planning on returning from Spain to the UK in the first part of the year, there may well be an opportunity to crystallise gains before returning. A little it's a little add-on to that really, is that ideally that is done in the UK tax year prior to arrival. So UK tax year, UK has a slightly odd tax year almost everywhere else of the calendar year, but HMRC in the UK really has no way of, no means to tax you if you have realised profits in January, February, but March, and then you've landed in the UK from April the 6th onwards. And that's just a general point. You do need to be a little bit careful of that. If you were sitting here today planning on landing in the UK in 4 weeks' time and crystallised profit, then HMRC has a very real interest in what you've done in your tax year of arrival, not just in the days before, like most countries. So that's the main one to look at that we'd be discussing with people, just to make sure they take advantage of. And yeah, and anything that you can do, take advantage of if you're in a low tax environment, really. And yeah, another thing now, since the budget last October, is look at how long you've been out of the UK, because we now have we had a sneak peek at a couple of questions before, so I'll keep my powder dry a bit on one of the on this next point. But
go for it, I can. If you answer questions, that's fine.
I'll come up in a second, I'm sure. But there was one that might be a bit relevant for, but now you are deemed to be, yeah, the UK looks at how long you have or haven't been in the UK. So if you've been out of the UK for more than 10 years, there's some good benefits with that. One of the key ones is inheritance tax, but the other is the ability to bring in some income and gains for the next 4 years. So if you're sitting overseas now and thinking about moving back, and this is like 9 years and a few months having been overseas, and you're planning on coming back at Christmas, well, maybe you can push that out a few more months and make sure you've been away for 10 years or more, and that may give you a couple of pretty significant benefits. So that's a new one.
Do Christmas is in April and you'll have more money for presents. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly how we look at it. Yeah. And your beneficiaries may thank you as well if you stay out for those 10 years. So it's that's a quite new one. So hopefully there's a couple of key pointers there.
Fantastic, thank you. At what stage should we be discussing our wealth with an advisor in our plan to move back or buying in the UK?
I think from an investment point of view, as you know, 18 months is about right. If you do it too far out, the reality is if you're looking and you're 4 years out from moving back, there's no harm in speaking now. There aren't usually significant changes, but if you think you're living in one country, coming back to the UK and you're 4 years out, there's going to be 8 budgets between the two countries that you're looking at before you come back. So you'd probably be acting too soon. I would say that 18 to 24 months is the sweet spot of being able to acquire information for us and other people here to be able to put together some guidance and be able to act on it. So yeah, 18 months or so is about right.
18 months or so. Thank you. There are 2 questions which I think I'll try and combine. So there's real estate tax implications for Canadians, and then what is the future tax treatment of non-DOMs in the UK? Is there a difference in the way taxes work depending on where you're coming from in the world, or is everybody on the same level?
Yeah, not really a difference based on your nationality. So if it's possibly not quite the question with a Canadian, but yes. If it's a Canadian resident looking at investing in, for example, a property in the UK and that's generating income, then the UK gets first dibs, first right to tax that property. It's a fixed asset of the UK. So that the overseas person would have a requirement to file an income tax return in the UK on rental income generated on that property. And if they are living in a country with a dual tax treaty with the UK, and Canada is one of them, then the country of residence of that person will give them a credit for the tax that they paid in the UK. So if they've if it's £20,000 worth of or £20,000 worth of tax, and in Canada or France or Spain can see that you've paid 15,000, then you'll write a check in your home country for the balance. You won't pay tax twice. So I think that's probably the best answer from the Canada one, is that actually the UK gets first rights of income tax and capital gains tax for that matter, but you get a credit for it wherever you're living overseas. The nationality of, if you're Canadian and arrive in the UK and a resident, there's no real special tax treatment there, other than the next bit, which is the non-dom, which is this 10 years of non-residency bit. And the way that that works now is that if you have not been resident in the UK for 10 years or more, the assets that remain outside of the UK, so when you return to the UK, if you keep a bank account or investments, pensions even outside of the UK, for your first 10 years in the UK, they are not subject to UK inheritance tax. So be careful with the wording here, because on one level it's an opportunity, but we are talking about an opportunity to save inheritance tax. So it's which is only relevant when somebody dies. So you have it's not a great thing to be planning for, but it is also it's worthwhile, for example, not bringing money into the UK unnecessarily if you don't need to within your first 4 years. And on a more human level, I know we've had 3 clients return to the UK, or 2 return and 1 that's planning to, that are really quite elderly, not that well overseas. And until that new rule, the families in the UK, they would probably have felt that they had to remain outside of the UK, separated from family, or they've undone the last 20, 30 years of living in Cyprus or Monaco or somewhere with no or very low inheritance tax. And they're taking a view that 10 years will, is an opportunity to come back. So yeah, foreign income and gains is 4 years to bring back income from most sources. Inheritance tax for 10 years are not relevant anymore, and it doesn't matter on your nationality. So there is hopefully that's those 2 points answered there.
And then there's a last question for you, which is how much property value to be purchased for foreigner to apply for permanent residency? Is there such thing in the UK like there is there was in Spain, there is in Cyprus and other countries?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question actually, because there have been golden visas, as they've been called. You can, if you spend a certain amount of money in some countries, that gives you a right to residency, not to nationality rights or passports, etc. Usually, but normally the right to remain. It's not a thing in the UK, so it'll be, there's not a hurdle rate, if you see what I mean, to get over with a property purchase. Portugal did it very successfully a few years ago, and it was started at €500,000, and I think, and then if you were a non-EU resident, so there were lots of people in China and Russia, etc., were buying property because it gave right to be in Europe and I think what happened with the property market is anybody had a flat that was worth about €350,000 suddenly decided they had a flat that was worth about €500,000. I think that's what happened. So, but they're not a sort of a golden visa buy-in in the UK. So you can buy
in the UK
you want, rather than feel that you should be trying to hit a certain target.
Thank you very much, Nick. And now I'll go over to Matt, if that's okay, to talk about currency. So Matt, why would someone speak to a currency broker of a bank?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I know it may not be relevant for everyone on the webinar, but if you are buying from abroad, it's definitely relevant. So, I mean, one of the main reasons we exist in the first place is because typically banks don't offer very competitive rates of exchange. It's all we do, and we've been doing it, as I said, for 25 years. Next month, we exchange, close to £10 billion worth of currency every year, which is about 30-40 million a day. So that allows us to buy at a much more competitive rate using our providers. Just as kind of an average, I mean, we mystery shop banks and other providers just for average rates and fees, and you can expect a saving of about £500 to £1,000 just on £50,000. So when you're working on much larger volumes of funds, you can see how that difference becomes more apparent. I mean, it becomes even more apparent when you start looking at the difference in currency movements. I think when we did this webinar not too long ago, sterling US dollar only moved about 10%, which is still an enormous amount of change, and now it's gone up to 13%. So I know Nick was mentioning that, you know, buying process, maybe leave yourself 18, 24 months, but that difference in the rate there is only in about 6 or 7 months change. So if you're looking at a property that's, you know, £500,000, for example, from US dollars, that's a difference of about $80,000 just on this year alone. So yeah, it definitely makes a difference if you're looking at buying a 4-bedroom property or a 5-bedroom property, because that's the difference right there. So although we can't, you know, offer advice on what is going to happen, because quite frankly we don't actually know, we just obviously got a lot of data to help us try and guess, but you know, we're here to offer that guidance and the experience of the market, and you know, we have a lot of expert information to help us judge that, and yeah, really just to help our clients not go in blind when they're exchanging their currency.
I mean, that's a great point. So we're saying go to Chris to know exactly how much you can afford and borrow. But if suddenly your £1 million turn actually into £800,000 and you put your offer in and it's been accepted at £1 million, then there is a problem, because there's £200,000 that have suddenly disappeared because of the movement in currency. So I mean, how can you help people navigate all this?
Yeah, so I mean, I covered, well, I've just spoken a little bit about how things change in the market, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways, because there is so much uncertainty at the moment. I mean, with what's going on in the US and in global trade, it really is such an unpredictable time. I mean, we have a lot of different contract types to help navigate that. Namely, something that's really popular with buyers is forward contracts, where at the start of the process, if you say, well, I need £800,000, how much is that going to cost me in dollars? You can buy your currency at that stage and then not pay for it until you get closer to the completion date. So if you are waiting for a property sale in the States or in the UAE, for example, you can secure your currency, and then once you have those funds available, settle the contracts, and you know exactly how much you're paying for your currency. So it removes that risk. And like I said, we like to have that conversation early, and just to see what the financial situation is, how much leeway they have for how the market may change in the meantime, and if you can afford to, you know, lose a little bit in the sense that you might also gain a little bit, then we can have that conversation. But at least the option's there, so you're not just exposed to the mercy of the markets.
That's great. And can you do it? So, for example, Nick was saying to start talking to him 24 to 18 months in advance. Could I lock the purchase of my currency then as far ahead as 18 months or 24 months in advance?
Yeah, so those forward contract options, they're usually around a year's time, but they're probably more for when you are a bit closer to purchasing and you kind of know how much you're going to spend. You do always have the option to say, well, I know I'm going to need pounds, so I might as well just do the exchange now. So you can do the exchange. We can hold the funds on the account here. We're an e-money institution, so the funds are always fully protected on the account here, or you can just get them across into a UK bank and hold them there instead. But yeah, you always have the option to go ahead with the currency, whether you have the funds readily available or not. And yeah, just have to speak to a broker about that.
And do I need to have a bank account in the UK?
No, so yeah, like I said, we have it's called an electronic wallet. So you can hold any major currency here with us, and like I say, we follow the safeguarding method where your funds are fully protected for the time that they're here. So if you are looking at buying a property and you'd like to just hold the funds here before sending it directly on to your solicitors, you definitely have that option just to hold them here. Know you've bought your currency, you know you're protected in case the dollar starts to drastically drop again, and then we can get it sent directly onto a third party if you need to.
So yeah, we had 2 questions coming in, which I believe you have answered, but let's just make 100% sure. I mean, the first one is your crystal ball, which you said you don't have one, but we'll still ask. What should I expect to see impact the pound in the next 6 months? Can I buy forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you definitely can, and I mean it's something I've been having conversations with a lot of people around. I mean, we do it both ways. So a lot of people purchasing in France and Spain and Portugal, and coming back to the UK. If you're coming back from Europe, and it looks pretty good at the moment for the currency, but if you're buying outside of the UK, there has been a lot of downside risk to the pound, and it's not particularly surprising with some of the economic data coming out. So the GDP figures for the past couple of months have underwhelmed the markets. As John mentioned, that you can expect maybe a couple of interest rate cuts for the rest of the year. Those kind of things do have a negative effect on the currency rates. And of course, you'll see a lot of speculation heading towards the autumn budget in October. And we know the currency markets move on expectation just as much as facts. So yeah, any kind of speculation heading towards that period will definitely have an effect on the pound. So yeah, as I said, it depends on really what you're looking at, because you can just focus on the pound and what's going on here in the UK. But from foreign currencies, we know a lot's going on there with, as I said, the tariffs and global trade, how that's going to affect those currencies. And you know, a lot of them are battling inflation and economic performance in their respective countries. So yeah, taking a deeper dive into that, because it may look all doom and gloom for anyone selling dollars or dirhams into pounds. But yeah, we have a lot of forecast data that we pay a lot of money for, and expert information to help just give you more of an understanding of what's happening and what might happen moving forward.
Thank you very much. There is only 3 minutes. However, let's try and navigate that last question between all of us if we can, because I think we talked about returning to the UK. We talked a bit about investing, but there was a question around second homes, which I guess is probably a kind of some form of investment. But let me find that. The cost of buying a house, taxes, etc. Anything that you can give to the audience around buying a second home in the UK. Over to you. Tax implication, for example, on second homes.
Sorry, I missed on the tax implications.
Yeah.
The second, well, you've got a higher stamp duty to buy. You've got a hurdle of that. I think 5% on top of whatever the normal stamp duty is. So it's a not insignificant step up in price there. But the key thing, yeah, I think as I touched on a bit earlier, it depends whether you're going to be for somebody that's maybe wants to make an investment but staying outside of the UK. You will, and this isn't a particular negative, it's just a fact, is that you will need to file a UK return on the income that you receive from that property. You do get a credit for where you live, assumed as a dual tax treaty, and come the day that you sell it, then the UK gets the first right to capital gains tax on that property, which is perfectly normal, by the way. I mean, that's the same in almost every country. So I think those would be the key the key points to make from a tax point of view.
From a tax point of view. Anything else that people should take into consideration buying a second home in the UK from anyone else on the panel?
Location. I suppose it comes down to what do you want it to do? Do you want it to be an investment, be a holiday home, be a buy to let? You know, if you look at property price trends, if you buy now, it will appreciate. So there'll be capital gains tax, but you would have made a gain. If it's sat there empty, there'll be additional council tax in majority of council tax areas. So there's a lot to take into account, but if not now, when? And I think we act for a lot of clients buying second homes because they want to own that second home. They want to have it maybe generating income now, but somewhere to go to in the future. But you just need to make sure you're advised and buy the right one.
So, something to add to that, again, in certain parts of the UK, you're going to pay an extra council tax if it is a second home. You know, Wales is a great example of that. So it's just something else that you need to be aware of to make sure you do your due diligence and check.
Thank you. Wales is such a beautiful place, though. Maybe some people will be ready to pay that little bit extra, I'm sure. Oh, 5, bang on, it's been an hour. So thank you very much. As I said, I didn't manage to get through all the questions, but thank you to the panel. It's fantastic to have your expertise and advice. I think as a last word really is, if you're thinking about returning to the UK or investing in the UK or having that second home in the UK, whatever you're planning on doing, talk to an expert. These guys are specialists. They know exactly the ins and outs of what's going to or what is happening currently, and they could save you a lot of time and money and worries and everything like this. So there will be a mailer following up this webinar where you will have the contact details from everyone on this call. And as I said, we will also share your contact details and some of the questions that unfortunately we didn't manage to answer. I'm really sorry about that. But thank you everyone for your time, and have all a lovely evening or rest of the day, depending on where you are.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks Emily.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.